Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. This week, I'm talking to actress/filmmaker Melissa Center. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I've looked at your IMDb, and you've been in all these big shows, various different parts in all of them. Was it short films straight away, or did you do features first? What did you sort of cut your teeth on?
So it was a little roundabout backwards. So the very first thing that I produced and had a stab at directing, and it was a more simple structure, was this web series.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I ended up collaborating with an acting colleague on a very short that if I recall correctly, I think we co-wrote and we're in together. And then produced it was very small. We connected with a DP and we just all kind of co-created it. But that was just more like an exercise, honestly. And then my first project that I actually produced was a feature film.
All right. Okay.
So a very sweet micro-budget indie called All I Want. And I did not direct that, but it was my story. Co-wrote it, I produced it, I was the lead actor in it, and then my West, who wrote it with me, ended up taking the director hat for that.
Right. Okay.
And then I went a step backwards and made a short after that.
Yeah.
And that I co-directed, starred in, produced. And then the next project was even a shorter short. So I went long to shorter.
Getting shorter and shorter. Well, that's one way of going, I suppose.
Yeah, and I directed and wrote that, but I did not act in that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, that's a bit of a leap, producing a feature film. So producing your first micro-budget feature, what did you learn from that experience? What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I learned so much because I was playing so many parts. I learned how to push way past my limits. I learned how to produce really in that project. I learned when it's important to kind of let go and trust the people around you as far as team. You can't control everything.
Yeah.
And because that can affect, your performance in certain areas. So I kind of learned to kind of release and trust the people around me. I learned that you can make something very special with just a little bit, so long as you're surrounded by people who are on the same page and in it for love. I learned that I'm kind of decent at this. And that it's a really magical, fulfilling, rich thing to have a concept in your mind and to fully bring it to fruition, and to see it materialize.
Yeah, that is a good feeling when you've written something and you see it actually performed in front of you, or even like yourself, you're performing it. Yeah. I guess the thing that's interesting there that I hadn't considered is I've had to produce and direct. And I was only talking to a filmmaker the other day who was saying, oh, don't produce your own stuff that you direct because it's horrible because your mind's split and you're thinking about problems while you should be thinking about directing. And God, I don't know what that's like, trying to produce and then act, because when I'm producing, directing, at least I know when the camera's rolling, the problems kind of fade away and I can just sit back and enjoy it. But you're having to go action and then suddenly switch something else on and make sure you're performing properly. That doesn't sound like fun to me. That sounds stressful. So how, do you mind me asking, with the first feature, was that self-financed? Did you do Kickstarter? How did you get the money to make it?
So I did an Indiegogo campaign for that film, and it was a combination actually of funds raised via Indiegogo, and then in that pursuit, I connected with two angel investors who ensured that we had whatever we needed to produce and do post for the film. And that was actually very kind of pivotal turning point for me, because I really didn't. I had raised money for my web series on Kickstarter, but I was just kind of this has to happen. And I was throwing spaghetti to the wall a bit. I just didn't have a process. It was the worst. And I really never wanted to crowdfund again. So it was very pivotal in terms of what not to do. And then I ended up having to learn how to do it better. And then now I like coach other people to do this work.
Yes, I heard about that,
Yeah.
coaching people to crowdfund. So what I want to do is so that we can go through the process of crowdfunding, let's come up with an imaginary movie, right? And you tell me how I'm going to get this thing through on crowdfunding, how I'm going to raise the money on it. But my first question is, if you were to do a campaign now, is there a particular genre or type of film that you think, oh, that'd be a lot easier to get the money for?
No.
No,
It's
really?
not. No, it's really not. It's not genre dependent. It's not even, it could be any story, any genre. I think it comes down to the filmmaker, her or him or themselves, being like fully committed and passionate and having to tell the story for a particular reason, whatever that reason is. And if that is communicated clearly, then people will rally around you. The difference with crowdfunding versus seeking investors is there's no return on the money, right? And so it's more of a, I need to kind of convince my community to be my patron, more so than I have to prove that this is a sellable film, in which case genre would be more important, right? Because you know that thrillers or horror films are typically easier to return the investment on than like a rom-com starring nobody of note. Yeah,
that's interesting, because that is, so I'm primarily working horror, and that's kind of what I think is cut me open and it says it down the middle. Is this going to make any money? Often the times it doesn't, but but that's always at the back of my head. So that's interesting that you say that doesn't necessarily matter when you start that campaign, that you don't need to pick the project for it. You just pick something you're passionate about. You really got to tell that story, and that's the one that you go with. So and if you were to do one right now, would you do a feature or a short? What would you be drawn to, do you think?
Well, I am about to
right, okay.
about to put together a project, my next film, and it's a short.
Sure. Okay. And is there a sort of because it's the other one I was going to ask you, is there a sweet spot money wise that you think is easier to let's stick with the short then, so we're sticking with the short. What's the kind of best amount you should go for, do you think?
I mean, short or let's say micro budget feature, really. I mean, basically anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, $60,000 is going to be the most achievable. It's not impossible to raise more for a short. That doesn't clock as much, but you could do a like real micro feature for $100K. And that is achievable. It just takes a very robust amount of team around you and support. The reason being, contributions in the crowdfunding realm for story projects, the average contribution is about $50. And so that times how many contributions equals the $100K. That's quite a big reach that you need to achieve that. But let's say you're trying to raise $30,000 or $40,000. I'll do the quick math. Let's just say it's 35. You need 700 backers, to give you that average amount. Even that's, a lift, because you need to be able to reach even more, because not all of the people who you're going to reach out to will say yes, right? So you need to reach probably nearly over the course of a campaign, like 10,000 eyeballs or something. But it's more achievable than needing to reach 100,000 eyeballs.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have a platform of choice for crowdfunding, or does it depend on the project?
It kind of depends. Well, it depends on the project, and it depends on the constitution of the artist, because they each have their different models.
Okay.
So I tend to gravitate towards platforms like Seed&Spark or Kickstarter that you have something to gain or lose. Versus, I did raise my first feature on Indiegogo, but it was a bit of a struggle. And I've found that it is easier for clients to kind of like underperform, since you basically keep what you raise. And so if you're almost there, but not quite, it's easy for people to be like, I'm good. you know, versus if you're like, I'm not going to get any of this money unless I hit my goal, then it really causes you to move past your own limits, for your audience to really rally around you because there's something to gain or lose. So that sense of urgency, I think, helps people ultimately. So that's why I typically guide people in that direction. But there are instances where the filmmaker is like, no way. And it's just too much on their nervous system, and they push back on me. And in which case it's like, great, we'll be successful, whichever we choose. Just know that it's up to you to kind of stick to that commitment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously I've never done crowdfunding myself.
Yeah.
And I think they both appeal to me. The Indiegogo thing, I guess, it feels like a safer option because at least you know you're going to come out of it with something. But then I have other filmmakers say to me, the problem with that is then if you don't raise all the money, you've kind of still got to make the project, but for less money. So it's sort of, you're then in a worse position because you're kind of trying to satisfy the people who've funded you, but you're making something that's not what it should be. It's not up to scratch.
Right. Exactly.
So let's say we're on Kickstarter. I hadn't heard of Seed and Spark. Does it work in a very similar way?
Seed and Spark, you have to hit 80% of your goal, and then you're green lit, which means you keep your money. So that's kind of nice for people because it's still we have to get there, but it isn't quite as nerve wracking as the Kickstarter model.
And do they? Because the thing that people always forget about is the charges or the percentage. Are they any better on either platform, or is it all standard? Is it all the same amount?
Kickstarter, Indiegogo, the same. Seed and Spark offset the platform fee for filmmakers. So there's kind of a tip option. So all of the collective tips that any backer may or may not put in goes towards the platform fee for the filmmakers.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then I'm assuming, unless I'm completely out of the loop, don't know what I'm talking about, I'm assuming is Seed and Spark kind of a smaller platform, so maybe has less people already engaged with it? Or am I just making an assumption there?
It is less of a global, it has less global awareness for sure. Kickstarter is just like wider known platform. It is more niche. It is specifically for storytellers, whereas Kickstarter is for storytellers and tech and innovation and puzzles and games and all the things. The thing with these campaigns, I think specifically for the story campaigns, it's less frequent that an existing, let's say, Kickstarter audience or even Seed and Spark audience just contributes to random story campaigns. So it's kind of like your job to drive people to whichever you choose. And there might be some outliers or some, it's like a little cherry on top of the cake or cupcake where you get a random contribution or two from whichever platform, but it's not something that you rest your success on. So I tend to not weigh that so heavily in making that decision.
Yeah. So you're not automatically going to get lots of eyeballs on it just because it's on Kickstarter. Unfortunately, that's the work you're going to have to do. So with that in mind, obviously you could get all sorts of assets together to kind of kick this off. Actually, maybe I'm jumping a step here. So what am I doing before that campaign launches? What am I starting to do straight away?
All the work.
All the work. Oh, God.
Yeah. I think a common misconception is like you build a really beautiful page and pitch video and make dope perks and click go and your campaign's going to be a giant success. Even if you have like a social media following, like it's so much more than that. So typically when I'm working with a client, I'm prepping with them 90 days before launch.
Right. Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And is that, are you already connecting to an audience, or are you just prepping things for the campaign?
So I am guiding them on the process. So I'm helping them start to plant seeds, and have at least some sort of audience with warmed eyeballs so that by the time they launch, then it makes sense. It's a lot of, so that those seeds are being planted, the communications are being prepped. that's really what takes the longest. The like organization of contacts, the assembling of a team around you, and preparing communications in advance, so that by the time you click go, there is you have a plan to implement. There's a marketing cadence. So there's, specific messages that go out depending on who these contacts are. And there's a frequency over time. And you just have to have the kind of system set up in advance so that you're not trying to play catch up during the campaign. Because there is also a momentum that needs to happen for it to be successful.
Yeah. Carl, this sounds terrible. It sounds like my worst nightmare. Honestly, it does. I guess other filmmakers would have to have this. You would have a nightmare that you would do all this work, you'd press go, you get like $100, and then it would just sit there. And then this is me just working through in my head. Then I would have this, and I don't know if filmmakers get this, but I'd probably, the fight or flight or freeze. I think I'd have the freeze because I'd be like, oh my God, I can't publicize this because everyone's going to see that I've only got $100. Yeah. So how do I push through that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think if you don't know how to prepare, that could very well happen. I find, and of course I'm biased, but in the past few years when I've been working with clients, when they go through the proper prep and then they do the steps that are laid out for them, they follow the checklist and they do all the homework, it's almost like they have a similar trajectory. So it's very rare that any campaign that I've worked with, any client who I've worked with has failed. There's only been like 2 or 3 because they didn't really do the thing in full. And so provided you implement the steps that I lay out, I see people with the money in the bank at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. So I've done all my I've done my 90-day prep. Got all my lists, contact lists. I've got loads of assets ready. I launched my campaign. Now, again, this is showing how out of touch I am with this stuff. Is it always a month? Can it be longer? Can it be shorter? How does it work?
Typically 30 days. Longer, I would never recommend. Shorter, I haven't on Kickstarter and seed&spark. I haven't experimented with shorter campaigns. I think it's feasible depending on how much you're trying to raise. But there's a third platform that I'll direct certain clients to that is less known in terms of the filmmaking space. It's more known in like nonprofit space, but it's called Cause Match. And the model there, they typically excel with a week of soft launch and then like a 2 or 3 day campaign, and then it's over.
Wow.
So that is really intense, and requires an even more robust team of, in that case, that they're called ambassadors. So it's really like people supporting people, like a real community effort around whatever it is. So depending on the individual, if they like that kind of idea of a shorter campaign and feel like they can garner a lot of individual support to make like personal commitments, essentially like goals, almost like a bike-a-thon, or there's certain things that people rally around, right? Then that can be really successful. Because it's like, real sense of urgency.
Yeah.
With the
yeah, I bet 2 days. Yeah, God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done all my prep. I've got my campaign ready. I've got a page. It's got some beautiful imagery, posters. It's got a video with me really passionately talking about my project. And it's got my perks on it. So perks, how important are they? Do they make a really big difference what you put in there? Are there certain ones you would advise people to definitely put in?
Yeah, so there is a kind of flow in terms of the amounts that I do recommend that people just tend to gravitate towards. I would say don't do too many perks, because I've seen mistakes where it's just like, every $10, or it's just like too much. So that's not necessary. The majority of contributions actually don't end up wanting perks. They just want to support the thing. So people get really hung up on the perks, and it's really not make or break. I love to make the perks a part of the story and have it be as an excuse for people to feel more connected to the story you're trying to tell, and to have it be kind of an offering of you expressing gratitude through what you give. Other mistakes I've seen are like a lot of physical goods, a lot of merch, which then you're putting the money into shipping and printing something versus in the movie. And so that's not worth that. So I do try to work with my clients to create something creative that is not as physically tangible necessarily, but will like add value, express appreciation and gratitude, and also like help continue to tell the story in creative ways. That's my sweet spot.
Yeah. So you're talking about for example, I'm assuming you're talking about things like, oh, there's a character named after you, or there's something in the story that you can come up with something, or something like that.
Yeah. I'll give another example, because it was from the campaign that I kind of learned how to do this better. The turning point campaign for me. I had raised money on the seed&spark platform for a solo play that I wrote called Marrying Jake Gyllenhaal. And inside the play it's like a quirky show, as you can imagine. So there are songs. There's a love letter that is written, and I rap. And so
nice. Yeah, I love it. Where do I invest? Yeah.
Ridiculous, right? Like this person rapping. So one of the perks was I would create like a personalized rap for the person who played.
Right. Okay.
And so that's like so ridiculous that people want it, right? Or I did do like custom love letters for people, and people really like loved that. So that was something creative that connected them to like the actual story that I was telling. And it was also something that they could feel like meaningful, that they were a part of the process.
Okay, I'll consider that one. So I pressed go, got all my stuff on my page. How often am I promoting this thing? Am I doing it 8 times a day? Am I doing it morning, evening, night? How much time and effort have I got to put into that?
So if you're the team leader, I would say it's kind of like full-time job-ish when you are running the campaign. It would be a combination of outreach and social media, right? So as far as social media, during the campaign, you're going to want to have several posts a day, just for the algorithm and for it to eventually reach the eyeballs of the people in the sphere, since I see like a sliver of a portion of anybody's content on social, right? And so you really have to be consistently posting daily throughout the day for that content to like eventually reach people. So it's a combination between that and then like direct communications, invitations to the page. And so then each week has a different strategy of messaging. And you're not necessarily sending every day like an e-blast to everyone, but at least a couple in a week, depending on the week. And then certainly following up with people in different pockets, some on social media DM, some on text, in various times, to give people an opportunity to see the invitation and respond accordingly.
Right. Yeah. And do you ever advise using paid ads on social media? No, so they don't work.
Not for film campaigns. If you're trying to raise for a product, yes, absolutely, that can translate to success. But because it's less tangible, paid ads aren't worth the investment.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. And what's the biggest mistake you think filmmakers make during the actual campaign?
Either relying too much on social media. I mean, I think the kind of like one campaign that failed, they were spending so much time and energy making like beautifully crafted social media things and not actually doing the work, which is consistent, direct, invitations and follow-ups. The social media, yes, is important as a visual representation that this is up and running, but a campaign is only one if that is met with direct asks and reminders.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would say that would be a big thing that I see. And then, there is a moment in time when these campaigns plateau. And so then you don't want to just kind of give up and lose steam. You have to kind of keep up with the marathon to the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find, having done these before, can you at all rely on people who've invested in the past to invest in your next film, or is it a case of one and done with most people?
It's not one and done. I would see that I would say, and that I think is a misconception. People are like, oh, I only have this one chance to crowdfund. And then it's like, I've kind of blown my opportunity. I've personally found, because I've done a few, and for various, goal amounts, probably increasingly more, that there's going to be a core group of people that support me, and that want to continue to support me. And some will fall off, and then I'll gain some new ones, right? Either this story or this timing may or may not like connect with my people, and that's okay. But I find that there is a consistency amongst like a core group of people who have given more than once to projects that I've put out there.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Right. And then what was I thinking? Looking back on all of the campaigns you've seen people do and the ones you've done yourself, what do you wish you'd known at the very beginning of that, when you first started?
When I first started as like, I'm going to launch something, or as a like coach?
Oh, if you had all this knowledge when you first launched your first campaign, what do you wish you'd known at the beginning?
That there's actually more available for me than I thought. That there is, I don't have to just like throw spaghetti to the wall, that there is a process that I could follow and have it result in success. It reduces stress and anxiety in the brain. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing next, and you're like spinning your wheels and wasting time. So that there is actually a process that you could follow and have it yield good results. Yeah, I guess those would be the main things.
Yeah. And is there any, because the last part of this, I think, which would, I completely understand people using crowdfunding, and it's amazing when you see someone. I've donated to a few, talking passionately about the project. You're like, oh, I'd like to see this come to life. This sounds really good. I think, again, maybe this is an imposter syndrome thing, or maybe this is something else going on with me. Asking for money off people. How do I get over that? How that can kind of really mess with people's heads, is not wanting to ask for cash. How do you help people get over that hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge, big hurdle internally, and it's not. I don't know if it ever gets any easier, and I'll put that in quotes, because it's a vulnerable thing, and there's a lot of noise around money, and there's a lot of reality around people's struggles with money. I think it is a major reframe in that. Well, a few things. We have to like remember that we, as storytellers and artists, are providing value. So we're not charity cases, right? We're often undervalued, but we're not asking for a handout here. We're working, and we're putting together a business, and we're employing people, right? So that's one thing. The money in these campaigns, it's like a byproduct of what it really is, and what it really is community building and audience building. And the way that people kind of say, yes, I want to be a part of the community, or this process, or uplift you, is the currency, right? So that's kind of like one thing. The other thing is, you can make the invitation and you can ask, and someone can say yes or no. They're an adult, right? And if they can't contribute, they can give you a thumbs up, and that's helpful along the way. They can share your stuff on social media, and that's helpful along the way. They can make a financial contribution. That's great. Or they can just know what you're up to and kind of clock your success. And those are all good things. So it's kind of detaching from the results. Of course, like you need the pledges at the end of the day. You'll get there. But along the way, it's just like what I'm doing here is sharing this project and inviting people to be a part of it from the ground up. And they'll come in if they can, or if they can, how they want to. And if they don't want to support, like, all good, right? Maybe the next one, or it's just not the right time for them, and that's totally okay.
I hope you found that useful. If you're interested in listening to another episode about crowdfunding, then check out my chat with MJ Dixon called How to Crowdfund Your Film. MJ's made a bunch of films all in this horror universe that he's created, and he's crowdfunded a lot. So he gives some sort of hard, honest truths about the process and tells us how he does it himself. See you on the next one.